Commander Vakris stood in the observation deck of the Kralith, Dominion's primary war station, and watched the stars with satisfaction burning in his 3 eyes. The station hummed with activity around him as soldiers prepared for another raid, and technicians calibrated weapon systems that had brought 100 worlds to their knees. Vakris had served the Dominion for 30 cycles, and in that time he had seen countless species beg for mercy. Before the might of Kraloth military power, the door behind him hissed open, and his second officer approached with hesitant steps. "Commander, there's a merchant here requesting an audience with you," the officer said, while keeping his gaze lowered in respect. Vakris turned from the viewport, and his mandibles clicked in annoyance. "I do not meet with merchants," he said sharply. "He claims to have urgent intelligence about our next target." The officer continued. "He says it concerns the humans." Vakris paused because the human worlds were indeed their next scheduled raid. According to intelligence reports, the species had been flagged as ideal targets. Divided governments, primitive weapons, rich resources, and a population that could be easily subdued. "Send him in," Vakris commanded after a moment of consideration. The merchant who entered was a Kulanti, one of those ancient trader species that somehow survived by staying neutral. In every conflict, this particular Kulanti looked older than most, with gray patches spreading across his scaled skin, and a weariness in his large, dark eyes that spoke of too many years seeing too much. "I am Merchant Tholas," the alien said while bowing low. "I have come a very long way to speak with you." "Commander, speak then," Vakris said impatiently while returning his attention to the viewport. "Make it brief." Tholas moved closer, and his voice dropped to an urgent whisper. "Do not attack the humans," he said. "I have seen what they do, and I am telling you now as someone who wants no war with anyone. Leave them alone." Vakris laughed, and the sound echoed harsh and cruel in the observation deck. "You traveled 3 sectors to tell me to fearsome primitive species?" he asked while turning to face the merchant fully. "The humans are weak and scattered across their little worlds with no unified fleet and no military tradition worth noting. That is what everyone thinks at first," Tholas said, and his voice carried a weight that made even Vakris pause. "I have been trading in this galaxy for 70 cycles, and I have seen the rise and fall of a dozen civilizations, but I have never seen anything quite like humans. Explain yourself quickly, or leave my station." Vakris Commanderolas took a breath that rattled in his chest. 15 cycles ago, the Benther Collective took human prisoners during a border dispute. He began. Just 40 humans from a mining station, and the Benther thought it would pressure the human governments into favorable trade agreements, but the humans did not negotiate, and they did not accept any offers. So the Benther won. Vakris said dismissively. "No," Tholas replied. "The humans spent 3 cycles hunting down every Benther ship and every Benther station until they found all 40 prisoners, and then they kept going until the Benther Collective agreed to reparations and handed over everyone involved in the kidnapping. A lucky campaign," Vakris said. "Or the Benther were simply weaker than anyone realized. The Vrosh clans tried to raid a human colony world 8 cycles ago." Tholas continued as if Vakris had not spoken. "They took supplies and destroyed the colony's main settlement and killed 3,000 humans, but 7 escaped and sent word back to Earth. And do you know what happened next?" Vakris said nothing, but his mandibles had stopped clicking. "The humans tracked the Vrosh across 18 systems." Tholas said, "They followed them for 2 cycles, and they made alliances with species the Vrosh had wronged, and they blockaded Vrosh trade routes until the clan's economy collapsed, and when the Vrosh finally surrendered and offered reparations, the humans took them and then kept hunting until they had captured every single Vrosh warrior who participated in the raid." "Propaganda," Vakris said, but his voice lacked its earlier certainty. "I was there," Tholas said quietly. "I was trading with the Vrosh when the human fleet arrived, and I watched a species that had ruled their sector for 200 Cycles brought to their knees because they made the mistake of killing humans and thinking it would be forgotten. The humans are not warriors, Vecris insisted. They have no great fleets and no weapons that surpass ours. You are correct, Tholis agreed. They are not warriors in the way. You understand war, but that is precisely what makes them so dangerous, and they do not fight to conquer or to dominate. But when you hurt them, they will not stop until they have balanced the scales, and they do not care how long it takes or what it costs them. The Dominion has crushed species far stronger than humanity, Vecris said. We will take what we need from their worlds, and they will learn to accept their place in the galaxy. Tholis stepped closer, and his eyes locked onto Vecris with an intensity that was almost physical. I am begging you to reconsider, he said. Not for the sake of the humans, but for your own people. Because if you attack them, they will come for you, and they will never stop coming, and they will follow you across the galaxy, if necessary, and they will dismantle everything you have built piece by piece until they get what they want. Your warning is noted and dismissed. Vecris said coldly, the Kraloth Dominion does not flee from prey species, and we do not change our plans because of merchant tailies. Tholis looked at him for a long moment, and something like pity crossed his weathered face. Then I have wasted my journey, he said softly. But I had to try, because I have seen what happens when someone underestimates humanity, and I did not want to see it happen again. Leave my station, Vecris commanded, and be grateful I do not have you detained for wasting military time. Tholis bowed again and turned to leave, but he paused at the door. When they come for you, Commander, and they will come, remember that you were warned, he said. Remember that someone tried to tell you the truth about what humans are. The door closed behind him, and Vecris returned to the viewport below the station. He could see the Dominion fleet assembling, 200 warships, each one capable of devastating a planet. They would fall upon the human colonies like a storm and take what they needed. Humans would learn what it meant to draw the attention of the Kraloth. Vecris activated his command console and began issuing orders. The fleet would depart within 2 cycles, and the first target was a human. Agricultural world called Nouveau Marcel Intelligence reported it had a population of 200,000 and minimal defenses. It would fall in less than a day as the fleet prepared to launch. Merchant Tholis stood in the docking bay of his small ship and watched the war vessels through his viewport. He had done everything he could, but the Kraloth would not listen. They never did. Arrogant species never listened until it was too late. Whispered a prayer in his native tongue for the humans who would suffer in the coming raid. Then he whispered another prayer for the Kraloth, because they would need it more. His ship detached from the station and slipped into the darkness between stars behind him. The Dominion fleet gleamed in the starlight. They looked invincible. Tholis knew better. He had seen humans remember. He had seen humans refuse to forget. He had seen humans pursue vengeance across impossible distances for impossible lengths of time. The Kraloth thought they were predators hunting prey. They did not understand that they had just made themselves targets, and humans never forgot their targets. Never. The sky over Nouveau Marseille burned red as the Kraloth warships descended through the atmosphere. Farmers looked up from their fields and saw death falling from the heavens in ships. That blotted out the morning sun. The colony had been established only 15 years ago by families from Earth who wanted a simple life growing crops on rich soil under a gentle yellow star. They had built towns with schools and hospitals and markets where neighbors knew each other by name. They had no standing army and no orbital defense platforms. The colony's security force consisted of 200 peacekeepers with training in crowd control and emergency response. Governor Chun stood in the command center and watched the screens with growing horror as the alien vessels took positions above every major settlement. Get everyone to the shelters, she ordered. Send the distress signal now and broadcast on all frequencies. The communications officer worked frantically at her console. Signal is away, Governor, she reported. but it will take 3 days to reach Earth at minimum. Then we hold for 3 days. Chun said, even though she knew it was impossible. The first bombardment struck the colony's communication array and turned it into molten slag. The second wave targeted the spaceport and destroyed the handful of civilian transports that might have carried refugees to safety. Then the Kraloth ground forces landed. Commander Vekris watched the invasion from his flagship and felt satisfaction surge through him. The operation was proceeding exactly according to plan. The humans scattered like frightened animals before his soldiers. Some tried to fight with hunting rifles and improvised weapons, but they fell quickly beneath superior firepower. Casualties? He asked his tactical officer. 17 wounded. None dead, came the response. Human resistance is disorganized and ineffective. Begin the harvest. Vekris commanded. Take the healthy ones between ages 15 and 40 and secure them in the transport ships and gather the resource stockpiles. But leave the infrastructure intact in case we decide to maintain an occupation. The Kraloth soldiers moved through Nouveau Marseille with practiced efficiency. They had done this 100 times before on 100 different worlds. They herded humans into groups and separated families despite desperate pleas and crying. Children Mayor Rodriguez of the capital city tried to negotiate, but was shot down when he approached a Kraloth officer. His body lay in the street for hours as a warning. To others in the agricultural district, a young farmer named Marcus gathered his family in their basement. We have to run, he whispered to his wife Sarah. If we stay, they will take us. Where can we go? Sarah asked while holding their daughter close. The forests, Marcus said. We know these lands better than they do, and maybe we can reach the emergency beacon in the wilderness station. 47 humans made the same desperate decision. They slipped away from the settlements during the chaos and fled into the wilderness that covered much of Nouveau Marseille. The Kraloth did not pursue them because Commander Vekris had calculated that hunting scattered refugees through dense forests would waste time and resources. A few escaping humans meant nothing when measured against the thousands already captured by nightfall. The first phase was complete. 3,000 human prisoners sat in the cargo holds of transport ships. The colony's grain silos had been emptied, and its medical supplies confiscated. Governor Chun was among the prisoners, and she sat with her hands bound and watched Kraloth soldiers patrol the holding area next. To her sat a teenage boy named James, who shook with fear. What will they do to us? He asked. Chun wanted to lie and tell him everything would be fine, but she could not find the words. Don't know, she said instead. But we survive and we remember, and if we get the chance we make sure Earth knows what happened here, in the forest. Marcus and his group had reached the wilderness station after 8 hours of desperate flight. The station was a small research outpost with basic communication equipment. The main array was destroyed, but the station had an old emergency transmitter designed to punch through interference. Marcus worked the controls with shaking hands, while Sarah kept watch. At the window, is it working? She asked. I think so, Marcus replied, but I cannot tell if anyone is receiving. What Marcus did not know was that the transmitter was indeed working, and its signal was bouncing through a series of relay satellites that the Kraloth had not bothered to destroy. The message was simple. Coordinates, attack details, estimated casualties, and footage from security cameras that had captured the bombardment. The message repeated on loop and began its journey toward Earth on the flagship. Commander Vekris received reports that all objectives had been met. 14 hours from initial contact to complete operational success. His tactical officer announced, this will be noted as a model operation. Vekris allowed himself a moment of pride before issuing the withdrawal order. The fleet would return to Dominion space and the prisoners would be processed for labor assignments. The human worlds would learn that the Kraloth took what they wanted, and there was nothing that could stop them as The ships lifted from Nouveau Marseille. They left behind a devastated colony building smoldered and bodies lay in the streets. Survivors who had hidden or fled began to emerge and found a world transformed into a nightmare. Among them was an old man named Chen Wei. The governor's father, he had survived by hiding in a grain silo, and he emerged to find his daughter gone. He made his way to the ruined communication center and tried desperately to get any equipment working. Finally, he managed to cobble together a weak transmitter from salvaged parts. His message was even simpler than Marcus's. They took them, and we need help, and please someone answer. The message joined Marcus's signal in the void. Both transmissions raced toward Earth at the speed of light aboard the Kraloth flagship. The prisoners huddled in darkness. They did not know if anyone would come for them or if the galaxy would simply forget about 200,000 colonists on a distant agricultural world. Governor Chun closed her eyes and thought about Earth. She thought about the billions of humans who had never seen an alien species and never experienced an attack like this. She wondered if they would care. She wondered if anyone would hear their distress signals. She wondered if rescue would come. What she could not know was that her father's message and Marcus's recording were about to reach a relay station near Earth's outer colonies. What she could not know was that those messages would be forwarded to Earth within hours. What she could not know was that the footage Marcus had transmitted showed everything: the bombardment, the roundup, the casual violence of the Kraloth soldiers. What she could not know was that Earth was about to see its people taken as slaves for the first time in centuries in the Geneva headquarters of the United Nations. The Security Council convened an emergency session at 3 in the morning. Representatives from every major government filed into the chamber with sleep still in their eyes. They expected another trade dispute or border negotiation. Instead, they were shown the footage. From Nouveau Marseille, the room fell silent as they watched colonists fleeing from energy weapons and children being torn from their parents' arms and Governor Chun being struck down when she tried to intervene. They watched the Kraloth ships lift away with 3,000 human prisoners. The footage ended, and the silence stretched finally. The Secretary General spoke, and her voice was soft but carried across the chamber like thunder. "Find them," she said. "Find all of them and bring them home." The representative from the North American Union stood. "We need to know where they took our people," he said. "We need to mobilize every available ship, and we need to do it now." "Agreed," said the European Federation delegate. "Agreed," echoed the Asian alliance one by one. Every representative stood in agreement. Hunt was beginning, 3,000 light years away. Commander Vekris settled into his quarters and poured himself a drink to celebrate another successful raid. He had no idea what he had started. He had no idea that he had just united a fractious species in shared rage. Had no idea that he would spend the rest of his life running. And he had no idea that humans never forgot. 3 weeks after the raid on Nouveau Marseille, Commander Vekris stood before the Dominion Council and received commendations for his efficient operation. The prisoners had been processed and distributed to labor camps across Kraloth territory. The resources taken from the colony had already been sold. Everything had gone according to plan. The humans have made no response. Council leader Thran noted with satisfaction. "They are as weak as our intelligence suggested. Perhaps they are preparing a response," suggested another council member. "Let them prepare," Thran replied. "The Dominion has faced and crushed species far more advanced than these primitives." Vekris returned to his duties with confidence restored. Merchant Tolis had been wrong about the humans and their supposed relentlessness. They were just another conquered species, learning to accept their place in the galactic order. Then the reports began. The first came from a border patrol. A 3-ship squadron had failed to report for scheduled check-in search. Vessels found nothing at their last known coordinates, no debris and no distress signals, and no evidence of what had happened, probably a navigation error. The sector commander reported, They will turn up. They did not turn up 2 days later. A supply convoy vanished between two Kralith outposts, 6 ships carrying food and equipment for frontier colonies. Simply disappeared again. There was no debris and no signals. Pirates, perhaps. Vekris suggested when the reports reached his desk. Or equipment failure across multiple vessels. But he felt the first stirrings of unease. The third incident could not be dismissed so easily. Outpost Kurvath 9 stopped responding to communications. Outpost housed 200 Kralith soldiers and served as a way station for ships traveling through that sector. Vekris was ordered to investigate personally. He arrived with a full battle group expecting to find the outpost destroyed by some unknown enemy. What he found was far worse. The outpost was intact and fully powered. The defense systems were online and functional. The supplies were untouched. Every single Kralith soldier was dead. Vekris walked through the corridors with his security team and felt ice forming in his blood. The soldiers had not died in battle. They had been executed methodically and efficiently. Some showed signs of interrogation, restraint marks, minor injuries designed to cause pain without permanent damage. They were questioned. His medical officer reported someone wanted information from them in the command center. Vekris found a message. It was written in Kralith script and sprayed across the main wall in black paint. The message was simple. "Where are they? Where are who?" asked Vekris' second officer, but Vekris knew with cold certainty what the message meant. The humans wanted their people back. "Seal this outpost," he ordered. "Report it as a containment failure or disease outbreak, and get me a secure channel to Dominion Command immediately." Back at Dominion headquarters, Vekris stood before the council again. This time there were no commendations. "Human ships have been detected in our territory," Council Leader Thran said. "Dozens of them operating independently and attacking our vessels. They are not military ships." Another council member added, "Intelligence reports show converted civilian vessels, corporate security craft, even some pirate ships flying human colors. How did they find us so quickly?" Vekris asked. "We do not know," Thran admitted, "but they are systematically checking every Kraloth facility in the border sectors and every ship they capture. They interrogate about the location of their prisoners. A tactical display showed human ship movements. They were scattered across a dozen systems with no apparent coordination. Some were single vessels and others traveled in small groups. What they all had in common was their target. Anything Kralith. This is not a military operation." Vekris observed, "It is a hunt. Then we will destroy the hunters," Thran declared. "Deploy the Third Fleet and eliminate these human raiders." But eliminating them proved difficult. The human ships did not engage in traditional combat. They hit supply lines and isolated outposts, and then vanished before reinforcements could arrive. They seemed to have no fear of death. A Kralith destroyer cornered a single human vessel near an asteroid belt. The human ship was a converted mining rig with improvised weapons. It should have surrendered. Instead, it fought until it was disabled, and then the human crew activated their ship's reactor overload. The explosion destroyed both vessels. Similar incidents occurred across the border. Humans who faced capture chose death, but before they died, they transmitted everything they had learned to other human vessels. The information spread through the human fleet like wildfire. Within a month, the humans had identified 17 facilities where Nouveau Marseille prisoners might be held. They attacked all 17 simultaneously. Vekris watched the reports come in with growing horror. 8 of the facilities were liberated completely. The humans extracted their people and vanished before Dominion forces could respond. 9 facilities were reinforced in time to repel the attacks, but the humans did not stop coming. They rescued 800 prisoners. Thran said during an emergency council session, "That is less than a third of what we took, and they should be satisfied with that recovery." "They are not satisfied," Vekris said quietly. "They want all of them." "That is absurd. another council member protested. No species commits this level of resources for a few thousand individuals, and it is not rational. Humans are not rational, Vekris said, and he thought of Merchant Tholus standing in his observation deck trying to warn him, not about this. The Galactic Council attempted to intervene. Ambassador Quellis, a neutral party respected throughout known space, contacted Earth's representatives. The Kralith Dominion is willing to negotiate. Quellis explained. They will return the remaining prisoners and pay reparations for the attack on Nouveau Marseille. The human ambassador listened politely. Then she said, "Return every prisoner and surrender everyone involved in the attack, or we will dismantle their civilization piece by piece." That is not a negotiation, Quellis protested. That is an ultimatum, and the Galactic Council cannot support such extreme demands. Then do not support them, the ambassador replied. But do not stand in our way either, Quellis tried again. You must understand that if you continue this campaign, you will destabilize the entire sector, and other species will be drawn into the conflict. The Kralith destabilized the sector when they attacked a peaceful colony, the ambassador said. We are simply correcting the imbalance. Surely some compensation can be reached, Quellis suggested. A payment for the prisoners you cannot recover and assurances of future protection. The human ambassador stood, and her eyes were cold. We do not want money, and we do not want promises, and we want our people, and we will get our people, and if that takes a year or 10 years or 100 years, we will still be coming for them. She left the meeting, and Quellis sat alone in the conference room. He had negotiated peace between dozens of warring species over his long career. He had always found a compromise that both sides could accept, but humans were not compromising. They were not even angry in the traditional sense. They were simply determined with a focus that transcended reason or strategic willis. Sent a message to the Kralith Council. Give them back their people and give them the ones responsible, and do it now before this gets worse. The council debated for 3 days. Some argued for compliance. Others insisted that surrendering to human demands would make the Dominion look weak while they debated. Human forces continued their operations. They made alliances with species the Kralith had wronged and promised protection to anyone who helped locate the prisoners. They blockaded trade routes and crippled the Dominion's economy. They sent messages to every Kralith world. Return them and this ends. But they did not wait for responses. They kept hunting. Vekris received new orders. Take command of a task force and eliminate the human raiders. But his orders came with a private addendum from Council. Leader Thran, find a way to stop them. Thran wrote, because I am beginning to think we made a terrible mistake. Vekris thought about Merchant Tholus, thought about the warning he had dismissed. He thought about the old trader's words. They will never stop looking at the tactical displays, showing human vessels spreading through Kralith space like a plague. Vekris finally understood the humans were not trying to win a war. They were not trying to conquer territory. They were trying to get their people back, and they would sacrifice everything to do it. For the first time in his long military career, Commander Vekris felt fear. 6 months had passed since the raid on Nouveau Marseille, and the Kralith Dominion was collapsing. Commander Vekris sat in a small room on a forgotten station at the edge of Dominion space and watched the news feeds with mounting despair. The humans had recovered 1,800 of the original 3,000 prisoners, and they were not stopping. Breaking news from Sector 7. The announcer said, human forces have liberated another facility holding Nouveau Marseille colonists, and this brings the total recovered to 1,812. Vekris changed the channel. The Dominion Council has fractured into 3 competing factions. Another report stated, the Surrender faction advocates full compliance with human demands, while the Resistance faction calls for total war and the escape faction suggests abandoning the core worlds entirely. Every channel told the same story. The Dominion was dying. The humans had done what no military power had accomplished in 200 years. They had broken the Kralith through sheer relentless pressure. Economic blockades had strangled trade, and many Dominion worlds faced shortages of basic supplies. The alliances humans had formed with former Kralith enemies meant the Dominion was surrounded. The constant raids meant nowhere was safe. Vecris had been relieved of command 3 months ago when the Council decided to make him a scapegoat. They offered to surrender him to the humans in exchange for negotiations. He had fled before they could hand him over. Now he lived like a fugitive in his own territory and used false identities to move between stations. His second officer, Kelrith, had remained loyal and sat across from him now. There is a ship leaving for the outer reach in 2 hours. Kelrith said, we could be beyond human space in a week. They will find us. Vecris said, they found the facility on Cormorth 12, and that was 300 light years from any human world, and they found the labor camp in the Var Nebula, even though we had it hidden behind false records. How are they doing this? Kelrith asked in frustration. We have superior technology and superior numbers, and yet they are everywhere. Because they are not fighting a war, Vecris explained. They are conducting a rescue operation, and every species that helps them gains their protection, and every species that hinders them becomes a target. He pulled up a star map showing the current situation human vessels were operating. In 40 different systems, some were military ships now, but most were still the converted civilian craft that had started this hunt. Behind the combat vessels came human diplomats making deals and human traders offering favorable agreements. The humans were building an empire not through conquest, but through alliance, and at the center of it all was one simple demand. Help us find our people on Earth. Fleet Admiral Santos reviewed the latest intelligence reports in her office at Geneva Command. We have confirmed locations for another 200 prisoners. Her intelligence officer reported. They are spread across 6 facilities in the Kralith interior. Dispatch rescue teams. Santos ordered. What about the Galactic Council's request for negotiations? The officer asked. They've sent 3 separate messages requesting we cease operations and enter formal talks. Tell them we will negotiate when we have all our people back. Santos said. Not before, Admiral. Some of the council members are suggesting that continued operations might be classified as an act of war against the Galactic Order. Santos looked up sharply. The Kralith attacked our colony and took our people as slaves. She said, that was an act of war, and we are simply responding, and if the council does not like our response, they should have stopped the Kralith before they attacked. The officer nodded and left. Santos turned to her window overlooking Geneva. She could see the crowds gathered outside the command center. They had been there for months now. Families of the prisoners, supporters, protesters demanding even stronger action. Every day, someone held up a picture of a loved one taken from Nouveau. Marseille. Every day the crowd chanted, bring them home. Santos had a daughter. She thought about what she would do if someone had taken her child. She knew she would burn the galaxy to ash to get her back. That was what humanity was doing now, not because of military strategy or political advantage, but because 3,000 of their own had been taken, and humanity had decided. That was unacceptable in the Dominion core worlds. Panic spread. Council leader Thrawn had been overthrown by the surrender faction. The new leader, Vess, immediately sent messages to Earth offering complete compliance. We will return all prisoners. The message stated, we will hand over all personnel involved in the Nouveau Marseille raid, and we will pay reparations of any amount you specify, and please end these attacks. The human response was simple. Show us where they are. The Dominion began transmitting coordinates of every facility holding human prisoners. Human forces moved immediately to liberate them. But there was a problem. Some prisoners had been sold to other species. The Dominion had traded humans to the Varnesh Collective and the Planeth trading houses and a dozen other groups. The Humans expanded their operations. They sent diplomatic missions to the Varnesh and the Pleneth with simple messages. Return the humans or face the consequences. Complied immediately after seeing what had happened to the Kralith, but some refused. They Varnesh Collective had purchased 200 humans and put them to work in deep space, mining operations when human ambassadors demanded their return. The Varnesh leader laughed. "We paid for them fairly," he said. "They are our property now under Varnesh law." The human ambassador stood without a word and left 3 days later. Human ships blockaded every Varnesh world. The blockade was total. Nothing in, nothing out. The Varnesh leadership sent angry messages demanding the blockade be lifted. The humans sent one message back: "Return our people." After 2 weeks, the Varnesh economy was in collapse. After a month, they were begging for negotiations. After 6 weeks, they returned all 200 humans with apologies. The message spread through the galaxy: do not keep human prisoners, do not trade in human slaves, do not stand between humanity and their people species that had practiced slavery for centuries. Suddenly, began releasing all their human captives. No one wanted to be the next target in his hiding place. Vekris watched it all unfold. He watched the Dominion fragment completely as different regions declared independence to avoid human wrath. He watched former allies turn on the Kralith to gain human favor. He watched his entire civilization crumble. "We should have listened to Merchant Tholis," he said quietly. Cloth looked at him in confusion. "Who?" "A traitor who warned me," Vekris said. "He told me not to attack the humans, and he said they would never stop until they got what they wanted, and I thought he was a fool." "You could not have known," Kellerth offered. "I could have," Vekris replied. "I should have, and instead I dismissed his warning because I thought we were superior, and I thought the humans were weak, and I was wrong about everything." News came that the humans had found another facility. This one held 400 prisoners, including Governor Chen. Rescue operation was broadcast across the galaxy. Humans rushed into the facility and freed their people with tears. Straining down faces, Governor Chen emerged and was immediately surrounded by cameras and reporters. "Did you think we would come for you?" One reporter asked. Chen smiled through her own tears. "I knew you would," she said. "I never doubted it, and humans do not abandon their own." The broadcast showed the reunion between Chen and her father, who had survived on Nouveau Marseille. It showed families reunited and children returned to parents. The galaxy watched and understood. This was why humans fought so hard, not for territory or resources or power, but for each other. Merchant Tholis watched the same broadcast from his ship. He had returned to this sector of space to see how the situation had developed. What he found shocked him. The Kralith Dominion no longer existed as a unified power. In its place was a patchwork of independent worlds under human protection. The humans had not conquered the Kralith territory. They had simply dismantled the civilization that had attacked them and built something new in its place. Tholis sent a message to his contact in Earth's diplomatic corps. "You have done what you set out to do," he wrote. "Will you stop now?" The response came quickly. "We still have 600 prisoners to find, and we will stop when we find the last one, and not before." Tholis closed his eyes and said a prayer for Commander Vekris and all the Kralith who had participated in the raid. They were being hunted across the galaxy, and humanity would find them. It was only a matter of time. 2 years had passed since the raid on Nouveau Marseille. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Commander Vekris sat in a cell aboard a human prison ship and stared at the metal walls. He had been captured 3 days ago, trying to flee to unexplored space beyond the galactic Rima. Human patrol had found his ship at a refueling station in neutral territory. He had not resisted. There was no point anymore. The door to his cell opened, and a human woman entered. She wore the uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps and carried a datapad. "Commander Vekris," she said while taking the seat across from him. "I am Ambassador Williams, and I will be representing Earth At your tribunal. Tribunal, Vecris repeated. Not execution? We do not execute prisoners, Williams said. Even ones who killed and enslaved. Our people. Then what will you do with me? He asked. Williams activated her datapad and showed him a document. You will stand trial for war crimes against humanity. She explained. The charges include orchestrating an unprovoked attack on a civilian population, the enslavement of 3,000 humans, and the murder of 17,000 colonists. Vecris looked at the numbers and felt nothing. He had gone. Beyond shame or regret weeks ago. I expected you to simply kill me, he said. Many in our government wanted that, Williams admitted. But we decided that death would be too easy, and you will serve a life sentence watching what becomes of your people and your territory. She pulled up another image on her pad. A star map showing what had been Krayla Spaceit was now labeled as the recovered territories and administered by a coalition of freed species under human oversight. Your civilization is gone, Williams said. Not destroyed, but transformed, and the species you enslaved are now free, and the worlds you conquered have their independence. And you rule them all, Vecris said bitterly. No, Williams corrected. We protect them, and we help them rebuild, and we ensure that what the Kraylath did to them never happens again. She showed him more images. Krayla citizens learning to live as equals with the species they once dominated. Former labor camps converted to schools. Trade routes reopened under fair agreements. Some of your people have adapted well, she said. They accept the new order and work toward peaceful coexistence, and others resist and make things difficult for themselves. Why tell me this? Vecris asked. Because you will witness all of it. Williams replied. You will spend the rest of your life seeing the consequences of your actions, and you will know that because you decided to raid one human colony, your entire civilization fell. The tribunal was held on a station in what had once been Krayloth space representatives from 40 species attended to witness the proceedings. Vecris stood before the judges and listened as the charges were read. He did not deny anything. What would be the point? The evidence was overwhelming. Footage from Nouveau Marseille, testimony from survivors, records from Krayloth military archives. How do you plead to these charges? The chief judge asked. Guilty, Vecris said. I did everything you have accused me of, and I did it because I believed humanity was weak, and I believed the Dominion was strong, and I was wrong about both. The courtroom fell silent. Do you have anything else to say? The judge asked it. Vecris looked at the humans seated in the gallery, saw survivors from Nouveau Marseille and family members of those who had died in the raid. He saw the faces of people whose lives he had destroyed. I was warned, he said quietly. Before the raid, a merchant came to me and told me not to attack the humans, and he said you would never stop until you got your people back, and I dismissed his warning, and I thought I knew better. He paused and looked directly at Governor Chun, who sat in the front row. I am sorry, he said. Not because I was caught, and not because I will be punished, but because I finally understand what I took from you, and I understand that nothing I say or do will ever make it right. The judges conferred briefly, then the chief judge spoke. Commander Vecris, you are sentenced to life imprisonment, and you will serve your sentence here in the recovered territories, where you will witness the rebuilding of everything your actions destroyed. Vecris was led away as he passed Governor Chun. She spoke. My daughter asks about you sometimes. He stopped and looked at her. She wants to know why you did it. Chun continued. Why you attacked our home and took us from our families, and I never know what to tell her. Tell her I thought I could. Vecris said. Tell her I thought your people would not fight back, and I learned too late that humans protect their own. Chun nodded slowly, and Vecris was taken back to his cell in the weeks that followed. The last prisoners from Nouveau Marseille were recovered. The final one was a young girl named Emma, who had been found in a facility 200 light-years from the original radar. Rescue was broadcast across the galaxy. The footage showed human soldiers rushing into the facility and finding Emma alone in a cell. She was 12 years old and had been 7 when she was taken. Soldier who found her knelt down and spoke gently. "We are here to take you home." Emma looked at him with wide eyes. "Home to Earth?" she asked. "Home to Earth." He confirmed. The reunion between Emma and her parents was watched by billions. Her mother collapsed sobbing when Emma walked off the transport ship. Her father held them both and could not speak through his tears. A reporter asked Emma's mother how it felt to have her daughter back. "I knew she would come home," the mother said. "I never stopped believing that someone would find her and bring her back to us. And that is what humanity does, and we find our people, and we bring them home." The recovery marked the completion of the mission. All 3,000 prisoners from Nouveau Marseille had been accounted for. 2,812 had been recovered alive. The rest had died in captivity on Earth. A memorial was built for those who did not survive. It listed every name and every age. The youngest was 4 years old. The oldest was 82. Merchant Tholis attended the memorial dedication. He stood among the crowd and listened as human speakers talked about loss and remembrance and the determination to ensure this never happened again. After the ceremony, he found Admiral Santos. "You did it," he said. "You got them all back." "Not all," Santos replied while looking at the memorial wall. "We lost 188, and I think about them every day. But you saved thousands." Tholis said, "And you changed the galaxy, and no species will dare take human prisoners again after what they saw you do to the Kralith. That was not why we did it." Santos said, "We did not set out to send a message or establish dominance, and we just wanted our people back." "I know," Tholis said, "but you sent a message anyway, and every species that might have considered humans as prey now knows the truth." "What? Truth?" Santos asked. Adulis looked at the memorial and then at the Admiral. "That humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy," he said, "not because you have the best weapons or the strongest fleets, but because you never give up and you never forget, and you will cross any distance and pay any price to protect your own." Santos considered this. "Is that what the galaxy thinks of us now?" she asked. "Some think that," Tholis admitted. "Others think you are saviors, and many species that were enslaved by the Kralith are grateful for their freedom. But yes, there is fear mixed with the gratitude because the galaxy has seen what humans do when someone hurts them." "Good," Santos said simply. "Fear will keep our people safe better than any weapon." 5 years after the raid, Merchant Tholis returned to the recovered territories on business. The region had transformed completely. Former Kralith worlds were prospering. Under the new system, the freed slave species had built their own governments. Trade flowed freely under human protection. Tholis met with Commander Williams, the diplomat who had prosecuted Vekristi, sat in a cafe on a station that had once been a Kralith military base. "I have a question I have been wanting to ask," Tholis said. "Why did you pursue them for so long, and other species would have accepted reparations after recovering a few hundred prisoners and moved on, but you kept going for 2 years?" Williams stirred her coffee and thought about how to answer. "Because if he did not, the next species that looked at humanity would see us as acceptable targets," she said finally. "They needed to learn that attacking us has consequences, and there is no distance they can run, and no hole they can hide in, and no amount of time that will make us forget. That is a harsh lesson," Tholis observed. "It is a necessary one," Williams replied. "The Kralith thought we were weak because we are divided into different nations, and we argue among ourselves, and we do not have a unified military doctrine, and they were right about all of that. But they did not understand that when someone attacks any human, all humans respond." She pulled up an image on her pad showing Earth from orbit. "We are fractious and difficult, and we fight with each other constantly," she said. But we are also fiercely protective of our own, and that protection extends to every human everywhere, regardless of what nation they come from or what beliefs they hold. So the raid on Nouveau Marseille united your species. Tola said. It reminded us what we all share. Williams corrected. And it showed the galaxy what happens when someone forgets that humans are not prey. Tolas nodded slowly. I tried to warn Commander Vekris, he said. I told him not to attack your people, but he did not listen. Would it have made a difference if he had? Williams asked. Would the Kralith have stopped raiding weaker species? Probably not. Tolas admitted.